A woman's shoe sits alone on a trash-strewn trail, half buried under rotting leaves. There's no foot inside, just a few steps away, a torn piece of shirt, stained with dried blood, and farther down, where the grass hasn't been cut in weeks, lies a woman's body, eyes wide open, motionless in the cold night. No screams, no one running, no one calling the police. She'd been dead, long before her heart actually stopped. And that was just another ordinary night in the park. She wasn't the first. Her name didn't make the morning news. Cops showed up late, stayed less than half an hour, and left with an empty evidence bag. Cause of death, undetermined. Case closed the same day, as if she never existed. And by the next night, the park was open again. The shadows came back, trembling under flickering streetlights, curling up beside rusted benches, dreaming of something that never arrives. And among them, someone won't wake up. The deaths kept happening, quiet, patternless, no obvious signs, no solid leads, but always the same, eerily so. A homeless woman, lured into an empty park, quietly killed, her body dumped in the grass like discarded waste. No one connected the dots. No one knocked on doors. The city moved on like nothing happened. Because sometimes, the most horrifying things are the ones we've gotten used to. And where it happened, it wasn't some forgotten backwoods town. It was a major American city, once the heart of the nation's industry. Detroit. Now it's just an empty cage echoing with the strained breath of people left behind. A city where no one hears you scream, and no matter how much blood soaks the ground, no one stops to look. He didn't run, didn't rush, wasn't searching for anything except the dead silence that follows a decisive act. To the outside world, Shelly Brooks was just another shadow in the night. Tall, slow-moving, a face no one could quite remember, never holding eye contact for more than 3 seconds. He blended into the cracked sidewalks, the out-of-service bus stops, the damp homeless camps where people lived shoulder to shoulder between body odor and disappointment. No one noticed him, just like he noticed no one, except for the women walking alone. He didn't choose them out of hate. He didn't know who they were. They just needed 3 things: to be alone, exhausted, and hopeless. People with nothing left, no family, no address, no future. They drifted from street corner to city park, slept on frozen concrete, traded pills for a lukewarm meal. They had names, but no one used them anymore. And to Shelley, that made them perfect. Every approach began with the only currency he knew the world still valued: a promise. "You hungry?" Or, "I've got a warm place better than out here." That's all it took. Because when you've been sleeping in the snow, eating out of trash cans, and ignored for years, one kind voice can feel like the last thread tying you to hope. And Shelley knew that, because he'd lived it. Not everyone followed him, but many did. Sometimes he led them behind a park, sometimes under a bridge, other times into an abandoned house with a rotting door and a ceiling peeling from rain. Places no one visited, but always within reach of the old public parks. Places where the light didn't reach, where cops never stepped. No cameras, no neighbors, no witnesses. Just him and the victim. His method of killing wasn't complex, wasn't clever. He used whatever was around: a rock, a piece of wood, sometimes just his hands. Heavy force, quick, direct. One good blow, and a skull could split like an empty shell. If not, he'd hold them down, both hands clamped tight around the neck until the struggle stopped. Usually took less than 3 minutes. He wasn't sloppy. He was practiced, used to silence, used to the strange weightlessness of a body right after the soul leaves it. He didn't hide the bodies, just left them there. In the bushes, near a wall, beneath a tree, no burial, no fire, no effort to cover anything. Like he already knew, no one would come looking. No one cared if a homeless woman vanished. And the truth was, they really didn't. Some bodies were found days later. Others took weeks. Some only drew attention when the stench stretched far enough that a park worker had no choice but to call it in. And even then, any investigation that followed rarely made it past a few pages. No evidence, no leads, no clear motive. More importantly, no one demanding justice. The coroner's reports listed things like possible overdose, undetermined trauma, or worse, unknown cause. DNA testing was rarely done, partly due to budget cuts, partly because no one was asking for answers. And so, each death slipped past like a drop of water on stone, quiet, steady, leaving no visible mark. Shelly Brooks didn't kill for some twisted thrill. He didn't keep trophies, didn't play games. He didn't read about himself in the news, didn't leave messages scrawled in blood. That made him invisible in the system. To the data, he didn't even register as a serial killer, because no one knew how many victims there were, or how many deaths were his. But if there was one constant in his killings, it was how he disappeared afterward. No cleanup, no blood trails, no last words. He just slipped back into the dark, from where he came. A broken-down bar, a gutted gas station, a street corner where people survived off tarp and rainwater, caught in rusted drain pipes. No one suspected he'd just taken a life. He didn't look any different from them, except maybe his eyes. Emptier. By mid-2004, at least 3 cases followed the same pattern. Black women, ages 35 to 50, unhoused, found dead within a few miles of Belle Isle and the southwest Detroit parks. No one connected them. They didn't belong to the same case file. No missing persons reports. No family ties. They died on different days, in different places. And without someone asking a bigger question, every killing stayed just another isolated death. Society's fragmentation was the perfect cover. The justice system was cracking, short on staff, short on funding, overwhelmed by gun violence. Police often ignored murders with no public pressure, and the public didn't care about the homeless. To most, their deaths seemed like just another consequence of the lives they'd chosen. Even though reality is never that simple, Shelly Brooks didn't need to be smart to kill. He just needed to stay quiet. And that was enough. Every move he made was built on one simple truth. No one was looking for those women. No one hunted for evidence. No one went all the way to the end. In a city where death had stopped being shocking, he was just a passing breeze, cold enough to kill, but never strong enough to shake the trees. His victim selection was instinct born from survival, paired with a talent for sensing who'd been abandoned. If a woman had slept outside too many nights, changed locations daily, spoke to no one, she qualified. If she'd just argued with a friend, been kicked out of a shelter, or recently released from jail, it was even easier. Shelley didn't need to stalk them for days. Just one evening, one short conversation, one opening. Nothing about his crimes was random. They weren't meticulously planned, but they weren't impulsive either. He didn't hunt. He waited, like a pit already dug in the middle of society, just waiting for someone to fall in. And every time it happened, Detroit lost another voice it had never heard, another soul it had never really seen, another death with no warning sign, except the smell of decay rising through the weeds in a summer park. Sometimes it starts with a smell, that thick, damp, sickly sweet stench of human flesh breaking down after days under the sun, mixed with garbage and overgrown weeds. The first to catch it are usually the park workers or someone out collecting cans. They stop for a second, wrinkle their nose, then keep walking. No one calls the cops right away, because in Detroit, the smell of a dead body isn't exactly rare. Late summer 2003, a group of kids playing ball near a vacant lot by Riverside Park. The ball rolls into the brush. One of them runs after it and comes back screaming, face pale, eyes fixed on something buried in the tall grass. Police arrive. A woman's body, early 40s, no ID, skull caved in. She's deep into decomposition, insects already nesting in her eye sockets. Clothes ripped apart. Next to her is a blood-stained chunk of concrete, nearly 15 pounds. No cameras, no witnesses, no DNA collected. Most soft tissue had already broken down. No one came to identify her. No missing persons report matched. Police report reads, unidentified female, cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Case closed in a week. No headlines, no outrage, just silence. But 4 months later, less than a mile away, another body. This time at Clark Park. It's winter, snow covering the grass. A homeless man looking for a place to sleep trips over something hard and cold. Brushes back the snow. A foot. He calls the police. They dig. It's a woman still wearing her coat, head tilted to the side like she's asleep, but at the base of her neck, a deep indentation. Hit with something heavy. This one shows more signs of violence, wrist bruises like restraints, underwear pulled down. Inside the coat, a plastic bag. Dirty syringe, bloodied tissues. The blood wasn't hers. Coroner rules it. Rape, blunt force trauma, body dumped. They run DNA from the evidence. Nothing in the system, no match, no link to any open case. Once again, the story fades. The killer does not. Spring 2004. Belle Isle Park opens up again after a harsh winter. Families, tourists, joggers trickle back, searching for peace in a city with little left to believe in. A group of volunteers is assigned to clean up near the riverbank. Among the trash bags, broken bottles, used needles, a leg. They find the rest of the body nearby. Shallow burial. The dirt so thin, a heavy rain could have brought her back to the surface. Her skull shattered, face unrecognizable, only clue, a plastic medical wristband. The name read Monica B. No last name. She'd visited a temporary clinic a few weeks earlier. No record beyond that. No family. No one looking. By now, a pattern had quietly formed. A homeless woman, often seen wandering the parks, meets a man, disappears into the night, re-emerges days later, no longer alive. But each death is logged as its own event. No formal links between them. No one asking why. Late 2005. A ripple of shock in the Corktown homeless community. A woman named Theresa, 38, once addicted but clean, recently working part-time at a laundromat, found dead in an abandoned house. She was considered on the way back. That night, she didn't come home. Friends said she was last seen talking to a man near the bus stop. One witness said, he asked if she wanted a drink. She didn't answer, but he followed her. Police found her body pinned under a large board. She'd been raped, bludgeoned, left there. What was different this time? She had friends, and one of them, Tina, decided to speak up. Tina said a few months earlier she'd been approached by a man in a park. He was kind at first, offered food, shelter. But when they got to the spot, his tone changed. He hit her, raped her. She managed to escape. Didn't go to the police, because no one listens to a homeless addict with no ID. But after Theresa died, she talked. From Tina's statement, detectives started to focus on the parks. And there it was. 6 bodies over 5 years. All women. All homeless. All killed within a 5-mile radius. All from head trauma. But none had missing person files. No families pushing for answers. No strong forensic links. The files had never been tied together. Until now. The truth began to leak out. The killer wasn't slowing down, and the city kept turning. July 2006. A kid riding his bike near a small park in Delray looks over, sees something in the grass, tells his mom. She calls the police. Victim number 7, female, sun-darkened skin, a faint tattoo on her wrist, a messy letter L, eyes wide open, lips purple, hair still clinging to dirt, no blood at the scene. But there were footprints leading from a back trail. Officers followed them, found a used condom, a bloodied tissue, and for the first time, the DNA was fresh enough to test. That last body didn't just mark another victim. It was the turning point. They ran the DNA through CODIS, and it returned one name, Shelly Brooks. Detroit didn't have a task force for serial killers. No command center. No late-night war room with maps and red pins marking bodies. The only things linking the deaths were the smell, the vague fear of those still alive, and a single DNA trace left on a filthy rag beside the corpse of an unnamed woman. Summer 2006. The 7th body brought the city's cold machinery to a reluctant pause. Not because Detroit suddenly woke up, but because the evidence was finally enough to reclassify a corpse from unfortunate to worth investigating. The forensic lab worked quietly. They ran the sample through CODIS, and 3 days later, one name jumped out from thousands. Shelly Andre Brooks. It wasn't a name the system had forgotten. Back in 1999, Brooks had been arrested for assaulting a woman in a park. She survived, accused him, but never appeared in court. She'd been transferred to a psychiatric facility. The case disappeared. Brooks was released. No supervision, no follow-up. And from then on, he vanished from the radar. Now the name was back. And at first, no one wanted to believe it. One man? 7 murders? Over 6 years? In the middle of the city? And no one noticed? Investigators started pulling old case files. One by one, death reports that had been closed too early. Outdated forensics, grainy crime scene photos. Slowly, a shape formed on the map. Belle Isle, Riverside, Clark Park, Delray. All within a 5-mile radius of where Brooks had once lived. But the evidence was still too thin. No one had seen him kill. No one had heard screams. No footage, no eyewitnesses. Each murder was just a body, a vague conclusion, and a silent full stop. Until someone said her name again. Tina. Tina, once homeless in Corktown, had lived with Teresa, the woman found dead in late 2005. After Teresa died, Tina had gone to the police, said she'd been attacked by a man, beaten, raped, but had escaped. No one believed her. They thought she was high. No evidence, no follow-up. No one went to the place she described. But now, with the name Shelly Brooks in play, everything shifted. They found Tina again. She'd left Corktown, drifting on the city's east side. When brought in, she was barely herself. Thin, dry-lipped, slow to move, a survivor, hollowed out by more than just time. Police showed her a photo. "Is it him?" She looked, nodded, slow, steady. "No one believed me while I was alive, so now I'll speak for the dead one." She described him with a clarity only trauma can sharpen. His voice, how he lured her in, how he smiled when he hit her. The way he whispered, "Don't worry, no one's coming," as his hands tightened around her neck. She even remembered the place. An abandoned house behind a park, boarded windows, a rotting mattress inside, empty liquor bottles in the corner. Police checked. It was still there, and in the back room they found it. A blood stain on the wall, hair samples, and a white plastic zip tie. Forensics moved carefully. The hair matched the 6th victim. The zip tie held fingerprints, a match to Shelly Brooks. That's when police began reopening the entire chain. The deaths once labeled possible overdose or probable assault were pulled from storage. Same kind of victims, same areas, same type of injuries. But most importantly, same pattern. No witnesses, no family, no proper investigation. For nearly 2 months, a small team of detectives worked non-stop. They redrew the map, tracked overlapping zones, pulled samples from old scenes, just markers on a file now. They walked the parks again, checked the abandoned houses, sat on the benches where the victims were last seen. What struck them wasn't just the number of dead, but the empty space between them. Stretches of time so long that people forgot anyone had ever died. And in those gaps, Shelly Brooks was just living, walking the streets, buying liquor at the corner store, eating canned noodles. Just another face in a crowd where no one asked names. His invisibility was his sharpest weapon, not because he was good at hiding, but because he knew where not to be seen. He chose invisible people, in invisible places, in a city that had forgotten how to see. And that invisibility, is what terrified the investigators most, not that they missed him, but that the system had built him a path, a society where the dead are unclaimed, the living go unheard, and a killer doesn't even have to run. During the investigation, another story emerged. Another survivor. Her name was Maria. She'd been attacked in 2002. Never reported it. Only came forward after hearing about Tina. Maria said a man once invited her to crash in an abandoned house, offering shelter for the night. But something felt off. She pretended to sleep. When he crept toward her, she smashed a bottle across his head and ran. Never looked back. Never told anyone. When asked why she stayed silent, she laughed. Who am I to them? Just a walking corpse. And it was fragments like these, half remembered, almost discarded, that started to form a clearer picture. Not just of the killer, but of the city that let him exist. Ian's surviving witness was a thread between death and silence. If Tina hadn't escaped, if Maria hadn't fought back, if Theresa hadn't had a roommate, everything might have stayed the same. And Shelly Brooks, he'd still be out there, moving through the streets, killing people no one cared to count. September 2006. After weeks of verification, cross-referencing, and combing over every trace, the investigative unit decided to act even then. They weren't sure what they'd find. Evidence fades, memories blur, witnesses disappear into their own records. Detroit doesn't startle easily. Not over a single murder. Not even over a serial killer. It watches, then turns away. But this time, some people didn't look away. And finally, the shadow of Shelly Brooks began to surface in the light. They didn't need to raid the place. Didn't slap on handcuffs the moment they walked in. He wasn't running, wasn't hiding, had no idea anyone was even looking for him. When the officer stepped into the old dive bar on the corner of Michigan Avenue, Shelly Brooks was sitting alone, nursing a crushed can of beer, eyes fixed on a wall-mounted TV, playing a football game nobody was watching. They said his name. He turned his head, slowly. No surprise, no resistance, just a blink, like he'd been expecting this for a while. Shelly Andre Brooks? He nodded. Didn't ask why. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Didn't fight. He stood up, held out his wrists, and let them take him. One regular at the bar, when asked later, simply said, I thought they had the wrong guy. Shelly was quiet, kept to himself, never caused trouble. In the interrogation room, he stayed just as empty. Clouded eyes, slight hunch in his back, hands resting on the table like a man waiting his turn at a food bank. Detectives laid out the evidence. DNA from the scene, a living witness, fingerprints, mapped locations of the bodies. None of it seemed to shake him. You know why we brought you in, don't you? Brooks looked down at the table. I can guess. They went through the cases, one by one. Names, aliases, the street names the women used. He didn't deny anything, but he didn't volunteer much either. Every time they asked, Did you kill her? He'd respond in a near whisper. I don't remember exactly. But if she was there, might have been me. They shifted tactics. Psychological pressure. They brought Tina in to face him. She sat shaking, barely able to lift her gaze. When she whispered, "Do you remember me?" Brooks simply said, "I remember. Someone got away." Then silence. It took 3 days, hours of questioning. But eventually, he started to confess. Not in order, no emotion, just scattered sentences, flat and empty, like someone reciting meaningless tasks. There was no plan. It wasn't anger. I didn't hate them. It's just I knew no one would remember them. No one would ask why they were gone. I didn't do it for attention. I did it because I could. They asked how many victims. He didn't give a number. More than 5. Less than 30. But I wasn't counting. Why the parks? Why homeless women? No cameras out there. No people walking by at night. And they didn't have homes. No one was coming for them. Me neither. I used to be one of them. He didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't blame. But he didn't show remorse either. When asked if he felt any regret, he said, What's regret? It already happened. No one's coming back. And me? I never really left. The confession wasn't signed right away. Brooks didn't ask for a lawyer at first, but the state assigned one anyway. The lawyer advised him to stop talking. Brooks asked to keep going, not to lessen the sentence, just to clear his head. The interrogation ended on the 4th day. 3 cassette tapes filled, 42 typed pages. It wasn't dramatic, no gory details, just the steady voice of a man who'd seen too many corpses to feel anything about death anymore. He was charged with 7 murders. Detectives suspected the real number could be 3 times that, maybe more. But they didn't have the evidence. As they led him out of the interrogation room, down a quiet hallway, one investigator asked him one last question. If you had the chance to go back, would you stop? Brooks paused. Didn't turn around. No, because no one stopped me. Shelly Andre Brooks was born in 1969 in a ground-floor apartment of a public housing complex on Detroit's Soquacha East Side, where paint peeled from the walls and water leaked from the ceiling straight into the kitchen sink. His parents were never married. Both were addicted to heroin. His mother died before he turned 10. His father disappeared a year later, leaving him with his grandmother, a woman too worn down to raise him, but still alert enough to make sure he didn't starve. His childhood unraveled between screaming neighbors, the sour stench of cheap liquor, and nights spent sleeping on the floor after rats shredded the mattress. School couldn't hold him. Friends didn't say his name. His medical record was a list of ER visits, fights, accidents, and once, nearly dying from an infected cut no one had bothered to clean. By 17, he left home, drifted through Detroit's west side, worked a few months at a gas station. Then came the years, a blur of shelters, alleyways, and temporary beds. No diploma, no ID, no identity. Sometimes he picked up trash for a few bucks. Sometimes he sold scrap metal. Now and then, arrested for loitering or public disturbance. Always released, because he wasn't worth holding. He wasn't a rebel. didn't carry some grand vendetta against the world. But every tiny fracture in the city chipped away at him, day after day, year after year, until he no longer belonged to anything. He became the final product of long-term neglect, a man no one wanted to remember, living in a city that had forgotten everyone. Looking back, it's easy to call him a monster. But if he was a monster, he was one born inside a system that refused to care, failed to recognize pain, and abandoned its most fragile. And he, from deep inside that invisibility, chose to turn his back on everything he never had. Shelly Brooks didn't die. He's still alive, serving life without parole in a Michigan state prison. No press came knocking, no documentary crews. His name doesn't appear on lists of America's most notorious killers. Brooks slipped into the prison system the same way he moved through the outside world. Quietly, invisibly, without a trace. There was no community demanding justice for his victims. No media campaign, no hashtags, no vigils, no candlelit prayers in the park. Most of the women he killed are still officially unnamed. They were buried in numbered city graves, steel markers swallowed by weeds. And because no one remembered them, Shelly Brooks's legacy doesn't live in headlines. It lives in absence, a gap that never closed, a string of deaths that never echoed. When he killed, no one heard the screams. And when he was caught, no one clapped. No satisfying ending. To the city of Detroit, this case was never a turning point. Just another entry in a backlog of crime. Drowned by stats, budgets, and exhaustion. But it left a quiet fracture. A reminder that evil doesn't need power or brilliance to survive. It just needs to be ignored. Brooks' existence is a slow wound, not sharp, but corrosive. Not just because he killed, but because he proved this. If you kill the right people, the ones no one remembers, the ones no one searches for, society will let you do it. For years. Not every killer wants to be known. Not every ghost screams in the night. Some, like Shelly Brooks, don't need to be heard. Don't need to be remembered. He left no trace, not because he was good at hiding, but because his victims had already been erased by society long before they died. No grand motive, no elaborate plan. Just a deep, quiet understanding of the city's indifference. And he used it, again and again, in the same neighborhoods, the same forgotten parks, inside a system too drained to notice it was bleeding out. There's nothing clear in the darkness Shelly Brooks left behind. Only questions that hang in the silence. How many people died without being called victims? How many deaths were never logged, never counted? How many lay on cold benches staring into a black sky, knowing that if they died that night, no one would say their name? And if that's true, then the crime didn't start with his hands. It started with the way an entire city learned to look away. Person by person, agency by agency, brick by brick in the justice system, Shelly Brooks was just the final crack, the result, the consequence. And sometimes, even consequences know how to kill. True crime unseen. Dark Files Ep 9. The most invisible predator you've never heard of. Detroit, Michigan. 2001-2006. 7 known victims. Countless unknown. The end of this story isn't prison. It isn't death. It's silence. The kind that was always there, long before the first body was found in the weeds. You might still hear the wind through Belle Isle Park. But listen closely, because some deaths still haven't been pulled from the dirt.